Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Big Bold You, a show that is dedicated to inspiring every person out there. And yes, that means you. It means your friends and your family to play bigger in your life because you can. We're going to help you. We're going to teach you how to do that. We want to inspire you to be bolder, which means you are going to have to do things when you're scared. I'm sorry to tell you that, but you're going to have to do them because you can. And we want to help you become the best version of you. So I believe in this world, there is a war between good and evil. And the only way evil wins is when good people like you and me, when we don't do enough. So every week we have an incredible guest on the show, that's somebody that is living their life on purpose with intentionality, that comes on to share their struggles, their obstacles, their ups and downs, their dreams, their passions, in an attempt to help each and every one of us be bigger and become the best version of ourselves. Now, today is no different. We've got an incredible guest on the show, Dr. Susie Dillon, and she is coming here to talk with us about her journey and also living in congruency. So, Dr. Dillon, thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
Well, we're thrilled to have you. And what I say all the time is, before we get started talking about our topic, why don't you just share with everybody just a little bit about who you are, where you're from, if you're married, if you have kids, and how you got to where you are right now in your life.
I'm Dr. Susie Dillon, and I'm actually a native-born Texan, so I'm a thoroughbred. That's what I like to say.
Hey, I like that. I like that.
Grew up in Farmers Branch when it wasn't on the map, so we always said Carrollton because we thought that sounded better. I have a 35-year-old son. I have a significant other I've been with, I think, about 15 years. We don't keep track. And I've lived a full life. I've had my ups, I've had my downs. I've learned a lot through the journey, and I am in a place now where I am trying to search and figure out what's next.
Right.
And I'm going to talk a little bit about how that means I'm in muddy waters right now, and what that means to me, and maybe what that might mean to you. And I'm also going to seek your help in helping me get focused.
Well, I love it that you're so open and transparent with where you are in your journey. And, you and I were talking about that. And that was one of the things you said, the waters are muddy. And I think so many people can relate to that, because believe me, you ain't lived unless you've had some muddy waters, honestly, right?
Yes.
But so many people, first of all, I think when you're younger, or maybe it's not just youth, maybe it's when you're at a place where you still have pride, okay, you still got some pride in you, and you think, oh gosh, I don't want anyone to know. I don't want people to know what I'm going through. I don't want to be embarrassed. I don't want people to think badly about me. But every single one of us goes through those times in our lives. And for where you are right now, how are those waters muddied for you right now? Where is the confusion that you're going through right now?
Throughout my life, I've tried many different things, and my passions have changed the older I get. The one thing that's very consistent is I'm very passionate about reading, and I love to read, and I love to learn. And that was my journey through getting my doctorate. I started out as a business computer information system major. That's what my BBA was in. And I started programming, and I'll give my age away here. I started with COBOL. So it's been a little while. And then I decided to go back and get an MBA in management. And then I had a mentor at the time who was also my boss. And he was like, I was thinking about going back to school again. They had tuition reimbursement, and I'm like, why not? You
Right.
know? So I was thinking about getting another master's degree, and he said, don't do that. I have 2 masters, and I've,
Right.
dreaded it ever since I did it. And I said, okay. So I looked into doctoral programs, and at that point in my life, he was like, what are you passionate about? And I thought about it, and I thought about it, and I thought, okay, I'm going to go home and I'm going to look at my books. Now, I have a lot of books. There were probably more boxes of books when I moved than anything else, and I'd gotten rid of half of them. So I looked at my books, and all of a sudden I realized my books had a lot on leadership.
Right.
And I know you asked later on, but I'm going to go ahead and introduce this one. This was given to me by a mentor I had for 20 years, and it's called Leadership, The Inner Side of Greatness, and it's by Peter Kostenbaum. Now, this is a very technical book on leadership. It's not like an easy read.
Right.
But my mentor gave it to me when I got my MBA, and I loved it when I was reading it, and I thought, you know what, I'm going to go for a leadership. So I found a university that had one, and I went through 7 years of going through that program and doing my dissertation. And since then, I ran into a bump in the road, self-imposed, but a bump nevertheless.
Right.
I had some pretty significant health issues. In fact, 4 years ago, I weighed 104 pounds.
Wow.
I had been bedridden for 2 years, and I didn't have to learn how to walk and all that again, but, your muscles atrophy, and so you have to get used to sitting up, then you have to get used to standing up, and then you have to get used to walking. And I have really bad neuropathy in my feet, so that was why I was in bed most of the time, because the pain was just so severe. So coming out of that experience, and it was significant enough that I was in the hospital for 2 months. And at one point, the doctors told my son to bring the family in.
Oh
And
my gosh, Susie, I didn't know any of this.
I know. My significant other said, no, don't do it yet. And so I'm glad he didn't. I got out of the hospital, and slowly but surely, I started getting better. I started where I could sit up by myself. I started where I could start walking by myself. And I had a lot of help with my roommates. My son was one included, but my significant other was as well. He did a lot for me. But I also met a gentleman who was a chiropractor in that process. And he started working on my feet, and I did not realize that chiropractors could help with neuropathy. But he did. And at one point, when he first started working on my feet, he could not adjust, he couldn't even touch one of them.
Because it would be so,
Because
so
it was
painful.
so painful. So then he did the other one, and I'm like, that hurt so good, and it made it feel better. So the next time I said, okay, do my right foot. If I start to come up off the table, just let me keep coming up off the table, because I
Right.
know what's on the other side of it. So he and I still see him. He and I have become friends also. And he's also helped me with some of my mental recovery by allowing me to barter with him on some things having to do with his IT stuff.
Sure.
So through that, I've realized I have a real passion for working with small business owners who may or may not need help. I like to go in and see first.
Right.
You never know. They may have everything together, but so far what I've found is quite often, they do the next shiny object thing, and some of them may have 5 different websites when all they really need is one.
Right. Right.
And it's like, why are you doing all this money and stuff? So I've kind of ventured into that some as well. But the help was to allow me to exercise my brain and go through therapy with my brain.
Well, so here to me, obviously, you did not have in the cards that you were going to be in a dire situation with your health. None of us planned for that. So here you are, about 2 years of your life. How did you get through that time?
1 foot at a time.
Right. One foot
I
at a time.
literally had to tell myself 1 foot at a time.
And because that's the struggle sometimes is just as hard, like you were saying, mentally as it is physically.
Yes.
So we're reading. I'm crazy about books also, and I can't wait to hear some more of your favorite books. But I facilitate a mastermind, and the book that we're reading this month, because every month we read a book. You'd be so surprised, and I know you won't be surprised, but you would be so surprised to find out most people don't read.
They
Most
don't.
people do not read.
Especially not with YouTube.
But it's like the world in which we live right now, to your point, it's so, immediate gratification. Get on YouTube, watch a video. But I'm telling you what, once you start reading, you'll never stop. You get hooked on it. And, Hal Elrod, who wrote The Miracle Morning, this book is amazing, and it's something that we're implementing ourselves. But, he was in a car accident, and he said, of course, getting over the physical issue was easier than the mental. And even he struggled mentally later because he basically went bankrupt almost. And he said that was harder and more challenging to get over than the physical limitations. So you just, in your mind, kept saying, 1 foot at a time, 1 foot at a time, 1 foot at a time. And were the health issues before your PhD or after?
After.
Okay, after.
So I was used to reading 150 to 200 pages a night.
Right.
That was just my life. I love it. And all of a sudden I was down to not reading any. And it was like, okay. And then communicating, just talking with people.
Right.
I can tell a funny story in that I had been out of the industry that I worked in for so long that I didn't realize that you don't have to dial the 1 in front of a phone number anymore. My son caught me doing that and goes, "Mom, what are you doing?" He said, "You don't have to do that anymore." I'm like, "Oh, okay." So it was it was little things like that, and having conversations with people. But one of the things that I did when I was working on my doctorate was I took scuba diving lessons, fell in love with it, and decided to become a professional, which is another thing about me that I do. I don't just stop at that one level and enjoy it. I decided to be an instructor. Well, if you're in a landlocked area like Dallas is, you end up having to go to scuba parks, and there's 2 that are close by. And if you're in the industry, you call it mud diving, pretty much. There is some visibility depending on how bad people stir up the bottom, but for the most part, you're diving in mud. And it's, where you can't hardly see. You have to look at a compass, and you have to trust your abilities to read the compass to go from point A to point B, which is one of the things we teach. And so, plus I had to get over all of the equipment and everything because I'm mildly claustrophobic.
Oh my gosh.
So-
I'm telling you that this is a big deal. I
It
mean, it's a
was.
big deal.
So by learning how to go through that and becoming an instructor, and then realizing as an instructor that muddy water wasn't as muddy as I thought it was, I can actually see figures in my students on the platforms.
Right.
I was like, oh, this isn't as bad as I thought it was. And as I got my confidence up, I could see more. Even through the mud, I could visually see more.
Which is really exactly what life is like when you personally are going through muddy waters. If you just keep moving forward, one of my personal sayings is success happens in action. And their life is like a maze. There's one right way in and there's one right way out. And even if you hit the wall, that's okay. Just keep moving forward, because you eventually are going to find the right direction that you're supposed to be going. And it's just learning. I mean, that's what you're doing in life. So when you're in muddied waters, whether it's physical or literal, if you just keep moving forward, you're going to see something.
It may be shadows. It may not be real clear yet,
Right.
but you will be able to see something. And I have faith in that. And that's why I'm okay admitting I'm in muddy waters right now.
Well, and what's so funny is one of the things that I like to do, because I think you have to have humor and you have to have laughter when you're going through difficult things, because you have to be able to laugh at yourself. You've got to be able to look at a situation and it's crazy and you think there's no way out of this, and you got to laugh because there's always a way out. There is always. And it's typically not just one way.
Right.
You know, there's typically multiple ways to get out of a pickle that you're in, you know, so to speak. I was actually talking to one of my kids this morning and I said, well, you're in a pickle. I mean, that's what you're in a situation, but you're not going to stay there. It's not going to be that way forever. But I like to have a video, and I always ask my guests if you've got a video that's something that makes you laugh, something that's silly. And Susie, you sent in this hysterical video, and I like it because
You got it.
You can't really see what it says on the bottom of it, but at the bottom of it, it says, this dog finally caught its tail and it didn't know what to do with it.
right. So, you know, so it's one
So
of
I'm
those
like,
things where
okay.
you're chasing your tail. Now you got it. Now what are you going to do?
Right.
What's next?
And he
you were-
walked out of the room still holding on to it. It was like, yeah, okay, I get that.
But you know, you were saying that kind of makes me think of where I am right now.
Oh, really?
No, what you were saying, that's
Oh,
what you
okay.
said. You
Yeah.
said that's how you kind of,
You are right. That's what I said. Now, on the muddy water thing, I still have another story to tell. Because with scuba diving, you do the mud diving here in town, and then you go, hopefully, to blue water diving. And when you get into the deep blue waters, it represents a sense of accomplishment, for one thing. The ability to see clearly. You can see forever, and it's beautiful. And then you've got buddies, which in the dark water, you know, you're like right there holding on to them, you know, don't go anywhere. I can't see anything. Be my buddy, you know. In the blue waters, it's a little bit more. It's more like peer support, like what we get in eWomen Network, which we're a part of and how
Right.
we met.
right.
And then the direction is still by compass, but it's a lot easier to, you can look at the compass and you can visually look to see if you're going in the right direction or not.
Now,
And you can make changes.
Okay, so I'm not a scuba diver, but I love this analogy that we're talking about here. So in any dive, is it that way, where at the beginning the waters are muddy, it's not as clear, and the deeper you go down, the clearer it gets?
It's just a difference in where you dive. Like
Okay.
if you're diving
Okay.
at the scuba parks, it's like one of them's an old rock quarry that has a spring fed, and it actually has some plants. It has hydrilla, and it actually has some fish, but people have fed them so they nip at you. Whereas in the blue waters, it's like going to Cozumel or Cancun or La Paz or an open ocean dive.
Right.
Even the Gulf. I've dove in the Gulf. And, you know, what's really cool is when you're diving in the blue waters, there's fish and there's schools of fish that'll come up. And when you're first learning, they'll like split way away and then they'll come way back. But when you get your confidence up and you know what you're doing and you get buoyant and you just float along, they actually will let you swim with them.
Oh, wow.
It's really cool.
But you know, see,
And that's symbolic of being around the right people
right.
and getting the right guidance.
You know, one of the things I was thinking about when you're sharing this is anything at the very beginning when you try to do something, it's always when it's the scariest, it's the hardest, it's the most difficult. You start having those crazy thoughts of like, can I do it? I don't know if I can do it. You know, all these things that you think of. But of course, the more you practice, then the better you get, the more skilled you get, and that fear goes away. So when the thing I like about what you're talking about with scuba diving is it's the exact same thing in life, which is if you can learn to scuba dive, you can learn to do anything. If you can learn and you can endure and get through the health scare and trauma that you went through, you can do anything.
Right.
And that's really, I think, one of the reasons I say everything that happens in your life, it's either for your protection or your growth. Because once you learn that there is nothing you can't do, then the fear, it starts to go away because your experience teaches you that you can get through anything you need to get through.
And that's very, very true. And the other part of scuba diving was the instructor who taught me was a vice president where I worked, and he taught scuba on the side. We later became really good friends, but he told me that if I was going to be serious about scuba diving, that I needed to do what's called gear out. And what that means is buying all your equipment. Kind of like a golfer who's going to go golfing.
Right.
You know, they want their own clubs. They're going to get their bag. They're going to get their balls. They're going to get their tee-ups, kind of stuff. Well, with scuba diving, you've got a lot of different pieces of equipment. And if you gear out when you first get certified, chances are you will keep keep going diving. And my very first dive, I should not have been on. The gentleman at the scuba store wanted to sell the spot and didn't take into account what my level was. I'd only had the dives at the lake. I'd never had a blue water dive. And this diving in the Gulf is like an advanced skill. It's very difficult to do. And I was like, okay, I want to go blue water diving. I'm done. Will I be okay on this? And he said, yeah, you will. Okay. So I signed up for it. I went down. I got on the boat. And I look around, and in learning scuba diving, you can either go non-professional or professional. And if you go professional, it's dive master, assistant instructor, instructor. If you don't, it's just, you become a master diver type level. Well, everybody on board that boat, except for me, was dive master and above. And it didn't register with me.
Yeah, because you just didn't
over my head here.
I mean, not at all. I mean, you didn't think about it at all. You're like, hey, okay.
No.
But you did at the time. Did you know everybody's level was so much
No.
more advanced than you?
No,
Okay.
it was the store owner that should have said, no,
Right,
no.
exactly.
You need to get, go to Cozumel, get some
Right.
dives under your belt. So anyway, and my instructor was on the boat, and he was like not wanting to have anything to do with me after my first 3 times trying to get in the water. But it was 10-foot seas, 5 to 10 feet waves. So the boat's doing this.
Oh no.
Well, I do my giant stride off into that, and I full-blown panic attack.
Oh no.
And there's a rope, and I'm going the rope the opposite way to get back on the stairs, and the stairs are doing this.
Oh my
And
gosh.
I literally crawled up those stairs on my knees with all my gear on, my fins, everything. You're supposed to take your fins off and walk up. I'm crawling up it, and they're, grabbing my tank, pulling me on. That was the first time. Okay. So one of them comes over and says, what's going on? And I said, well, I'm not used to going down head first, kind of stuff. You got to go down head first. That's the way the rope is. Let's put you with another person. So I tried again. I dive, I giant stride off again. And again, this time I got my fins off, but I was hyperventilating by the time I got up there.
the stairs.
Right. And so the third time, the dive master came over to me and he says, okay, so what's going on? I said, I got to go down feet first. And he said, well, there's a weight line back here that you can go down head first, but I've got to get a dive master to go with you because you're going to have to free swim to where the anchor is, where it's tied off, the boat's tied off. And I went, okay. And there's heavy currents too, okay? So these 2 guys say, we're going to go in, we'll get you over to that line. One of us is going to be below you, one of us is going to be with you. And when you're ready, just kind of go like this and go down. That's the signal for down, and we'll start going down. And I said, okay. And he said, if you need to stop, just tell me to stop. Okay. So I giant stride in, we get to the down line. I go down. I swear to God, I think the guy below me was pulling me by my feet. But the guy was this far from my face. Are you okay? Are you okay? You know, we make it down to the bottom. They swim. One guy swims above me, and one is swimming on his back below me. They get me down to where the line is, where everybody else is, and they all turn and start clapping. And I was like, oh my gosh. Well, the next dive I got in by myself, and the rope went up under the boat. And the people I was with were like, oh no. And I just went, I'm okay. And I just pushed and went on and did it. But the moral of that story is, you know, check with more than one person before you go do that. And 2, if you gear out, you will keep diving because you feel, I don't know if I would have gotten back in that third time if I hadn't geared out.
But you know what? One of the things that it made me think of when you were sharing that story is how, with everything in life, there's always people that want to help you succeed. There's always people, whether it's succeeding in business, whether it's succeeding in relationships, whether it's succeeding with scuba diving, whether it's succeeding in golf. There's always people that know the end result. If you just do it, that they will be there with you
If you're willing to accept the help.
right. That's so true. That is such a good point. If you're willing to accept the help, which really makes me think of the approach that you have used, and really, Stephen Covey, Tony Robbins, and it's the be, do, have approach. Explain that to people, because I think, each and every one of us are out here we're trying to make it. We're trying to make it. And you need help if you're coachable and you're willing to accept that help. And this is an amazing approach.
Right. And one of the things that I've learned is that in reading and through counseling and through a lot of different life situations, one of the other things about my past history was I was married for 2 years, and my son, who's 35, was the result of that marriage. Other than that, I was raised to believe once you get married, you stay married. Well, at one point, I realized that till death do us part didn't mean until it killed me.
Yeah.
So I can be part of the Me Too movement. And so in going through some stuff there, I was shown or shared, somebody shared this with me about the be, do, have. And the victim lives in a have, do, be. So it's always, if I have enough time, if I have enough money, if I have enough support, then I'll do something. Like I'll leave my abusive husband, or I'll go to college, or I'll start a business, and then I will be happy, educated, and rich, which doesn't ever work out. So as a victim, I'm always searching to have something outside of myself to help me be okay.
Right.
As a do, have, be, which was the next phase of my life, which was corporate America with Fortune 500 companies, the do, have, be type thing is the worker bee. So the more I do, the more defined by what I do. The more I'm defined by what I do. So in other words, okay, I'm a programmer. Okay, so now I want to be a manager. So the more I do, the more of a chance that I'll be able to have being a manager.
Right.
So,
Well, and that is so common, where if you talk to somebody in corporate America, the question is, well, even outside of the question is, what do you do? It's not who are you? It's what you do. You're defined by what it is you do. And that is very common in corporate America and
especially of older people.
Oh, for sure. For sure.
My dad's motto was suit up, shut up, and show up.
Right, exactly.
Or show up and shut up.
But that's how so many people will define themselves, is by what they do instead of who you are, which is
a B.
Which is a B.
Right. So when you're into that worker stuff and you're into the do first, you're driven, busy, and tired all the time. And the same holds true for have. The more I do to keep what I have, it's a never-ending cycle. So in essence, you never do get to the be. You never do look at what's inside of me. You define everything about yourself based on what your career is, or what you do, what your title is, or things of that nature. The winner, however, lives in a be, do, have. And what that means is you seek out people who have what you want, who have what you want to be. Not monetary things necessarily, more things that mentors, I guess you could say, would be a good example of that. So I've used eWomen Network to seek out mentors and to seek out being around people who be they're in the be mode of what I want to be.
Right. And the thing is when you live in the present, it's easier when you're living in alignment and in congruency, because when you're being true to who you are, we're all sent to this earth with gifts and talents. We are all sent to this earth special. So many times in life, we're comparing ourselves to other people, thinking that, gosh, we want to be like they are, instead of being still within ourselves and finding out what makes us special, because each and every one of us has special gifts and talents that make us special. So when you are sitting in silence and, listen, if you're not sure what's giving you trouble, all you got to do is sit in silence.
Look them up.
All you got to do is sit there, close your eyes, and just be, and you're going to start to have things run through your head. And those things that are running through your head, whatever they are, whatever those things are, because sometimes and typically the things that are running through our head aren't always great things,
That's true.
It's like, you're a loser. Things are not, but if you just keep sitting there in silence and you start asking yourself questions, what does make me different? What do I like to do? What comes easily for me?
What gifts do I have to give to others?
And and sometimes, even if you're not sure about it, if you'll ask somebody that love and trust, what makes me different? What makes me special? A lot of times it's a lot easier for somebody else to look at you and say, oh my gosh, what makes you so special is, and they'll rattle it off. And you're like, wow, you start asking several people, you'll start to see there's a trend. There's a trend that people are picking up that a lot of times you may not be picking up on, but to really have success and be happy in life, you have to find who you are at the core, because that really does make you the happiest. And then it's like, this is who I am, and then be who you are. Don't run away from who you are. Embrace that. And that's when you start to have that alignment and that congruency that you're talking about. And
that's when you're able to do.
That's right.
That's when you're able to do things such as goal setting, taking action, planning, which is something we've talked about several times. And then the having takes care of itself.
Oh, yeah, exactly.
So whatever it is that you want to have, the way to get it is not to have it first.
Right, exactly.
And all of that having been said, what I generally do, or the way I guess I looked at stuff when I put this together to meet with you and talk with you today, was that passion and purpose for me are building a bridge. So the bridge is to connect the passion, experience, and education with the purpose. And I can take the getting clarity out of being in muddy waters, which is a process I need to go through to determine my passion. And then I can live in the be, and that's the other side, that helps me to define my purpose.
Well, and one of the things, you mentioned, we met at eWomen Network, and eWomen Network is actually a global organization. And here in Dallas, I lead that organization. It's incredible because our founder, Sandra Yancey, is somebody that's been very open and transparent with her ups and downs and her struggles. And, she said when she first started eWomen Network 20 years ago, she didn't know what it was going to turn out to be. She didn't. No. She just, there was a burning desire within her, which I know there's a burning desire within each and every one of us. There's something that's pulling us that, when we knock into the wall, it's saying, that's not the direction you're supposed to go. And that's, to me, where the muddy waters begin. The muddy waters begin because you're either going in a direction that you're not supposed to, and it's going to help you redirect, or you potentially may be going in the right direction, but you haven't gone deep enough in that direction. You're just too surface, just like you talked about with the scuba diving. You got to go deeper. And but once you know what it is that makes your heart sing, that you have the passion for, then you know you're on the right track. And when we were talking, we were actually at an event last week, and we were talking, and I said, "You're so open and you're so transparent. I kind of want to follow you along this journey."
Yes.
I want to follow Dr. Susie on this journey because you're willing to share that journey. And so, what are the cards you have on the table right now, and where do you think it's leading you?
The cards on the table right now are a wide variety of a lot of the things we've talked about today. My passion's leadership, and I really enjoy that. And I've started reading again, and I've looked into teaching leaders how to lead as an option. Management's in there as an option, either doing videos or education or seminars. And then there's, I like to say survivor, but it's the battered women's group. Meant a lot to me. And that's an area I could give back in that I know of. So those are some of the gifts and some of the I guess tools I have in my toolbox that I have that I could give freely. And I'm seeking mentors. And one of my mentors suggested that I do a survey and to try to find out some questions that people want answers to, and then to take that and allow me to help build my foundation of where I want to go.
Well, one of the things that I have found in my journey in life is there's 3 pillars of development. There's personal development, there's professional development, and there's legacy development. And to me, that legacy development is what is pulling us. It pulls us through life. It's our void. When we feel like we have a void, it's because we're supposed to be doing something. And if we're not doing that actively, we don't feel good. We just don't feel right. We're discombobulated, which is something I just said, right when I came in. But in your ultimate goal in life to have success in any area is leadership. That's your ultimate goal, whether you realize it or not. Your ultimate goal to have success in any area of your life is to become a leader. And the first person you have to lead is yourself. So when you just said you would love to give back to battered women, well, as we know, when you are battered, you have a victim mentality, and you talked about that a little bit.
Yes.
One of the things that I did in my corporate career was I worked in healthcare. I worked for a hospital system, and one of my hats that I wore was we were in charge of our community health education and our employee wellness. Well, every quarter we would coordinate a workshop, and it was a self-defense workshop. And we had police officers and detectives that would come in and teach that. And they always would go deep in talking about a victim mentality, because perpetrators look for victims. Because
they can tell.
Oh, 100%.
Yes.
A perpetrator can tell who a victim is. So there could be 10 people sitting in a room, and one of the 10 is a victim. A perpetrator can go in and pick out the victim, and that's who they're going to victimize.
But there's a flip side to that coin. A female who has been battered can pick out a batterer.
Oh, but listen.
And seeks it
Hey,
when they're first learning about the cycle and learning about who they are. You can pick a batterer out as well.
Right. And to me,
But instead of running, you tend to get gravitation towards them.
but my whole point in saying this is that, you can change 100%. You don't have to maintain that victim mentality, because it's all a mentality. Poverty is a mentality. And because it's your mentality, you're poor. Being a victim is a mentality. Because you have that mentality, you're a victim. But leadership is a mentality as well. And so to be able to go in and help women who are victims or who have been victims to turn their mentality around to becoming a leader, that's life transformation. And that, I mean, oh my gosh, your years of experience in that, how powerful is that? Because that truly, people don't realize it. People are like, oh, I want to have success, I want to do this, I want to do that, but really your first goal is you want to become a leader. I mean, that's really the
It should
goal.
be. Yes.
And it's when you become a leader, that's when you start to have success in all these areas, because
And you change your choices that
right.
you make.
You change the way you think, you change your mentality, you change your perspectives, and that change, and you change your behaviors, and the be, do, have, you start to focus on that approach, and everything in your life will change. And I think that would be extremely powerful for you to do. And I know there's such a need. I mean, there's such a need to help. There's so many people.
I prayed about it. We talked about this too. I prayed about it, and it was kind of interesting because right afterwards there was a special on about the athletes, and it was the court hearing. And for those of you who may or may not know, there was a medical health provider. He was their doctor, who abused some of the well-known athletes.
Are
right
we talking
now.
about gymnasts?
Yeah, gymnasts.
Yes, the gymnasts.
I'm sorry, gymnast.
Right.
And he went to trial and he pled guilty, and he thought that would get him off the hook. But the judge, with the wisdom that she had, allowed for every single victim to come to her courtroom and give a victim impact statement. And she made him sit on the stand, on the chair, and they had the podium right in front of him. So he had nowhere else to look. And then they did a special afterwards with like 20 of them, and they were talking about how much relief it was to finally, put a stop to it. None of them thought they had the power. None of them thought they'd be believed. And after enough of them, I don't remember how many of them there were. There was 60 to maybe 80 of them, but only 20 were interviewed for this. And the very first person, the very first youngest lady, she was now the oldest lady there, but the youngest lady, the very first victim, was like, if I had been empowered more to stand up to this guy. Now, she was maybe 13 years old, and she's talking about, if I was more empowered then, maybe none of these other women would be sitting here.
Right.
And I thought to myself, things have changed. We used to not be able to have discussions like we can now in the
Right.
Me Too movement. And back in the early 80s, the police sided with the men. There wasn't any police education. There wasn't any, laws that required them to take one of the person out of the situation, whoever that is. So there's been a lot of progress, and I'd love to be a part of helping give back and give to help it keep going.
Well, you have so many strengths and talents with your education and with your training, because that's what we need to be doing. We need to educate girls, we need to educate women, we need to educate parents, we need to educate the authorities, we need to educate that you can't live in silence, and
No.
and you do have the power, and nobody has the right to do these things to you, and you have to speak up. And I don't care if the first 10 people that you tell don't believe you, you tell 10 more. But if you're not told that, I'm big into managing expectations. And if you're not told that, if somebody doesn't know, listen, they just give up because they don't know. And to have somebody with your knowledge and with your wisdom and with your insight and with your experience and with your passion jump into that, oh my gosh, so how powerful. And that's why, listen, we're going to follow Dr. Dillon, and we thank you so much for sharing very, very transparently, because Listen, let me tell you, she's onto something big. And what I say all the time is we're always in preparation. So it's not coincidence that you have your master's and your PhD. There's no coincidence that you had the struggles with your health that you had. There's no coincidence that we met and you're on this podcast sharing your crossroads right now. There are no coincidences. And there are no coincidences in your life as well. So if anything we shared today helped you, inspired you, or you think might help and inspire somebody that you know, please share. Please share this, subscribe to the Jens Johnson YouTube channel. And if you are interested in coming on the show, if you've got a topic or something that you're passionate about that you'd like to share, please let us know. And if you'd like to get in touch with Dr. Susie Dillon, how do they do that?
They can email me at dr.susie.dillon@gmail.com.
So if you have an idea for Dr. Dillon, or if you'd like to get to know her a little bit better, please do reach out to her. She'll have an incredible offer for you. I can promise you that. And if maybe there's some insight that you'd like to share with her as well, reach out to her. We thank you so much for tuning in. Until we meet again, be big, be bold, and most importantly, be you. Bye-bye.